All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for another episode, number 170 of the Fantasy Timeline. I'll be your host tonight, Drew at dr_PRA. I've got co-host here, Bill at Supa Dupa Flex back with us, and we have a special guest with us tonight, sharing with Bill my longest running commissioner for any of my fantasy football leagues. We got Noah Grant. Graciously putting me up in his house tonight while I came down to visit some family here in Florida. So, Noah, you want to just say hey and maybe share something a little bit about either you, your leagues, just let folks know a little bit about your connection to fantasy football over the years.
Yeah, love fantasy. I love fantasy football from the perspective of it just brings people together. It gives good. We were just talking about that. Just brings people, gives it an excuse for people to hang out, give them an excuse for a phone call and to connect relationally. So I've always loved that. Was the reason I started my first league in 2000, 2001, which is still going. So it was a 2-quarterback league. Most people back, and I don't know, then didn't start 2-quarterback leagues, 4 wide receivers, 2 quarterback or 2 running backs. The idea of depth and just wanted to bring a bit of a change and I don't know, what do you call it, competitive nature to what seemed on ESPN, and some of the leagues were just 1, 2, 2, and I was just like, well, anybody could make a great roster with that. So I wanted it to be something where you had to be active to be good and not just reward the guy for not paying attention. And so I feel like we try to build that and not make it about money, but make it about winning some money, but make it about the relationships that fantasy can bring people together through. So that's me.
I can attest to that. Certainly we've got a group of us. I think you mentioned 4 of the original 10 members are still in the league. And then I think most of us that are in it have been in for multiple years at this point, most of us for the better part of a decade or so. So it's been a lot of fun, a lot of trash talk on the side, which has been interesting here.
Yes.
But no, that's been fun. So we're going to get into this week here a little bit. Some pretty clear injury news that we'll touch on, which I'm sure a lot of other folks have already discussed. But we can start there. Bill, I'm trying to think. I think Kirk Cousins probably the biggest injury of the week for most of us, especially that play in any 2 QB or super flex leagues. How many leagues do you have him in, Bill? 0.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. I had moved him in a couple of my leagues a while back, because we used to be just like harping on like adding him, so I think so many people that listen to this show are in my leagues, and they were more aggressive about going to get Cousins. I'm fortunate I didn't run into that unfortunate Achilles tear, but it's one of the bigger, I guess, injuries to affect many people, right? Moving forward. So it's just one of those things, like, how do you go about replacing somebody who was playing probably the best he's played in his career? Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things, because is Josh Dobbs going to be the, what's he going to be, 60% of, of Cousins? And then that's 60% for Addison and Hockenson and Jefferson when he gets back. And, maybe they try to run the ball more, so it helps the running backs more, but the running game is kind of shitty. So it's like, there's a lot of questions now. And I really think you just almost have to. And then what do you do with Cousins? Do you trade him away to try to replace him? And what can you even get right now? Because the question mark, like, does he start next year? Probably, based on like kind of the timeline with Rodgers. But where is he starting, right? Because he could be on a whole nother team unless he gets franchised. So, and are the Vikings going to franchise him? with this injury. So there's just so many questions in regards to him that it's like, what do you do? What's the right thing to do? It's probably, mileage may vary based on, the quality of your team this year.
Yeah. Noah, do you have Cousins in any of your leagues? Okay. So I'm the only sucker in this group that has to figure this out.
Well, you were the only one reaping the rewards this year, actually.
Yeah. So I am looking at a couple of leagues where I'm trying to win now, where I'm going to try to maybe move Cousins for a different quarterback. And, I'm sure I'll have to package him with something, but hopefully it'll lighten the package a little bit, just to get somebody that'll get me through this year. You and I were talking before we got on here. Gino's a guy that I'm certainly interested in, who I think might be a little bit more attainable. I like his upside still. I like that he's through his bye. If I'm being honest about some of the pragmatics here with these leagues where I have, Cousins was very much a surprise QB1 in a couple of leagues, and then just a really, really nice QB2 in a league where I had him behind Josh Allen as my QB1. So it's going to be interesting to see for the competitive teams what I can do. For the teams that aren't competing, I'm happy to keep him on my injured reserve and take those points off the board. I guess the question is there any interest for either of you, especially in your dynasty leagues, to try to get him cheaply as quarterback depth for next year for any of your leagues versus, maybe you have competing teams where, you don't feel good about getting a top 2 or 3 quarterback next year in the draft, but you can maybe take advantage of somebody else's situation here. What are you willing to give to get Cousins and stash him on your IR and potentially have a really solid QB 2 or 3 again next year?
So I think that it's tough right now because people are very much, kind of holding out hope that he's going to be the same Cousins going into next year. So I think people are kind of expecting a first round pick back still at this point, at least the people I've talked to. I'm not willing to pay that just because I have no idea, like his situation. There's just so many question marks. So I'm probably in a second and a third, maybe. Like I'd be willing to pay maybe 2 seconds. I don't think I want to give any firsts. Would I do somebody like Gabe Davis or something like that? If somebody just wanted to upgrade a different position. That's kind of the player level I'd be willing to give up, I guess. I don't think we're going to see as much moving as, it's one of those ones where people's values are going to be so far off at this moment because people are kind of locked into like how he was performing this year. And so they want like they'd rather just wait and get that if they expect that next year as well.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. If I can get somebody to value him at a second or more, especially for those teams where I'm trying to get somebody back, I would love that. But yeah, I'd be shocked to see anybody in like the Dynasty, the DLF trade finder that's getting a first back for him.
Yeah. So like there was in one of my chats, somebody traded Bryce Young for him and a late first. And it was an interesting conversation because there was a lot of people on each side of that. I think I'd rather hold on to Bryce Young personally. But I would say I was in the minority in that conversation, that most people preferred Cousins and the late first, with the potential to squeak down into the mid first. It's more likely,
back half,
109-ish, but could get down as low as 106.
Do you have a preference there, Noah? If you had to pick one of those two sides, would you rather have Bryce Young or would you rather have Kirk Cousins and a later first?
Oh. For sure. I don't have a lot of confidence in Bryce Young. I'm just not sold.
Yeah, that was what a lot of people's opinion was. They're just Bryce Young hasn't really shown what they were hoping to start out. Stroud looks so much better, and Young just looks so small out there that was a concern for a lot of people. And then plus you get the first, even if you only get a couple of years of Kirk Cousins, you still get that first to kind of flip into something else if you want. So Because you could get another starter, right? Like, I mean, you could get another starting quarterback
Good.
for that price. You could get Geno. Basically,
Is that what I got to give up for Geno as a first?
Oh, for sure. A starting quarterback with multiple years.
That's not what I need to hear.
I mean, you agree though, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I had Geno, that's what I'd be asking for.
Yeah. I mean, I have Geno in like a couple leagues, not selling him at all, but yeah, I there's no way I'd be moving him for. I would just reject any offer that didn't have a first in it. With no comment.
Is there anything? I'm trying to think. I know there were a couple of others. I mean, we had some other quarterbacks kind of get dinged up, and
well, Ritter got benched.
Yeah.
Garoppolo, we're not sure what's happening. So there's all of a sudden three. Pickens got dinged up, or Pickett got dinged up. So his ribs.
Yeah.
Trubisky ended up finishing the game out for him.
Stafford, right?
Pardon me?
Stafford's questionable with his hand, right?
Yep, his thumb. So there's, I mean, that's what 5 guys we just talked about. That's almost 20% of the league. So a lot of stuff happening, and plus you have buys this week. So it's getting a little rough in these quarterback waters, at least for week 9. So I think we're going to see some Heineke's moving, some O'Connell. Is it O'Connor?
Yep.
Aiden O'Connor. O'Connell. Okay.
O'Connell,
and who else? I don't know if I think Pickett said he's going to play. I don't think anybody's too excited about Brett Rippon coming in for Stafford. So I think mainly it'll be Heineke. And I mean, Heineke's an interesting topic or conversation because, like, is he really just coming in for one game and just kind of say, okay, Desmond, sit back. Let's kind of go, like, reset. We're going to put you back in a couple weeks. And, it's all back to normal. Or does having this YOLO type of quarterback, Heineke, he's kind of got a little Matt Stafford in him, or
Ryan Fitzpatrick. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, guys that'll kind of try to get that ball in there, even if, there's going to be a few picks in the game because of that. But so, like, if you have him, what do you trade him away for? Because he could be the starter the rest of the year.
Yep.
Or he might only be starting this week. So he's an interesting one. I have an offer actually in one league. Somebody offered me Alec Pierce and Cedric Tillman for Heineke. Cleveland just traded away DPJ to the Lions. Mm-hmm. So it's like, Tillman's going to get a little bit more run, I would imagine, but like Alec Pierce is not exciting at all. But Heineke's not really. I'm rebuilding in that league, so it's like I almost want to get the points off my roster.
Yeah, I mean, what would you want as far as value back, Noah? If you had Heineke as like your 4th, 5th quarterback in a super flex league,
well, if I could get a second for him, I mean, if I could get a second, I would take it. Even if it was a low second, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, I think a late second's about right.
I would send Heineke in a 3rd to get somebody second.
Yeah, I like that.
The 3rd. Wow.
So I'd rather have a second than probably either of those 2 wide receivers at this point.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Control my own destiny, even if I have to add a little bit to Heineke to get there.
Yeah. I don't know. I did offer Heineke to somebody for a 25 second, and they rejected no counter.
Really?
He doesn't even have a quarterback to start this week. So, and he's in second place. So, ballsy move on his part to just go without a quarterback this week. But he is playing me, so my team is not set up to win this year.
Yeah. I think at that point, again, depending where your team is, if you just need to move the points, that's fine. But I think there's enough pieces in that range of value that you should be able to get closer to what you want versus just the first offer that's out there. Yeah, I think, they've got their bye week 11. So I could see, I think probably Heineke starting for week 9 and 10, maybe. Let Ritter sit and then see, how he handles himself there. If he does well in practice, does well in the film room, maybe comes back feeling a little bit more prepared. And especially if Heineke does throw, 4 interceptions with 2 touchdowns over the next 2 weeks, then it is what it is. But if he balls out, yeah, he could have really, cause I don't even know, what does the NFC South look like at this point for standings? The Falcons still have a shot at playoffs with where everybody is. It's wide open, right?
Yeah, it is.
So there's still plenty to play for.
What do you do with Ritter at this point? Do you just kind of wait and hope, he gets a chance again, or
who's worth more?
What's that?
Who's worth more between him and Heineke?
Oh my! I don't even know the answer. So Falcons and Saints are tied for first.
Okay. So yeah, they got to play to win. So whoever gives them the best chance to win the next few weeks is presumably the starter.
Yeah. Like I guess you got to hold. I don't know the answer, I guess the answer is you got to hold Ritter. You don't trade him away at this point, right?
Yeah. And again, what are you willing to give up to take that dart throw that maybe he gets another chance and does something with it? He's had 8 weeks to show what he can do.
Are you paying a second for Ritter?
No.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things, I guess, if you have them on your team, you just hold or you take what you can get. Like, I'm not going to sell Ritter for a third with the chance that he could end up. Yeah. Heineke could totally implode like he has in the past. So,
yeah.
I guess Ritter's a definite hold, and Heineke might be a sell.
Yeah.
If you don't need him this year, unless you need starts.
Yeah. I think Ritter, for me, I would be more okay getting a player back for Ritter. I think you could probably find, give me somebody that's in the wide receiver 30 to 40 range. Let me filter that out here.
Yeah. I don't even know if you're going to get that.
Would you take like a Tank Dell or a Tutu Atwell for him?
It's funny that you said Tank Dell because that's like exactly like I would totally prefer Tank Dell.
Yeah.
Atwell, I would not accept.
Okay. See, I can't count as I'm scrolling, but I think those guys are both in the mid to low 30 when it comes to wide receiver by points. Okay. You go lower, and then you're getting into some younger guys that are not going to make it.
Would you do Mingo for him?
I would be intrigued.
Like if you had Heineke?
If I had Heineke, I would still probably prefer. Yeah, I could be talking to Mingo. He's the type of younger wide receiver I would do if I wasn't going to get a second back in a package. And for Ritter, I think I would be fine taking a Mingo there. Thielen's got to be done in the next couple of years. Chart can't stay on the field. So unless they bring somebody else in or draft somebody else, he seems to have a path to relevance there.
Yeah. What about AOC? Are you giving anything up for him?
I like him. I stashed him on a lot of rosters, surprisingly, this year, either during the later part of the draft or early waivers. So he's one I would definitely be interested, depending on what people are asking for. If I could get him for a third, I'd probably be fine with that.
Yeah, I think that's probably what you'd have to pay.
So I would give, a couple of thirds or a third and a fourth, or again, one of those wide receivers. Like I would give a Cedric Tillman in a third or something like that to get to him, especially if I need starts in the next few weeks.
Okay. Yeah, you might be a little higher on him than me. But yeah, it's probably anybody that's going to want or be willing to move him would probably need something, at least what you're offering. They probably wouldn't accept what I would want to pay. So,
in Superflex Army 2, Lindsay also has Aiden O'Connell.
Oh, well, there you go.
Trying to think here. Yeah, as far as anybody else that you feel like is any position players, you already talked through kind of the Minnesota offense. Noah, you've got Puka in our league, don't you? And I want the flex.
Yeah, I have him in
And
Dynasty and redraft.
Okay. What are your thoughts with Stafford potentially being out for a bit? Do you think Puka keeps up what he's been doing? Are you still excited about him with Kupp back now? What are you doing there?
I mean, I think that when I was just watching the games, I feel like he gets separation. And so there's a clear difference in his route running than I think that the others that I'm watching other games in. Where the separation in his route running is so good. I don't think that it'll matter that Stafford's not in there. I just don't think that they will run it. I don't think they'll pass it as much. And so I expect a downturn, probably a good 30%. But at the rate in which he was performing, to have, I don't know, you can almost not don't, you know, don't want this to happen. But he could almost come down 50% in production and still be having a rookie, like an unbelievable rookie season. So I don't feel like at any point I never thought that what he was doing was ever going to maintain that. So I feel like okay, you're probably going to come back down to a level that's just a fair expectation. So I'm pretty prepared on both leagues to sub him to sub him out if Stafford's not, because I don't have a great expectation. So I have probably got, if I have a better option, I'm going to use it. But
you're not trading him away to get ahead of anything.
I think he's absolutely the find.
Okay.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast where they were mentioning why are you trying to get him, Drew?
Yeah, just putting a feeler out there. We'll see.
I saw the feeler.
So I was listening to a podcast where they were mentioning like the depth of target for him and Cooper Kupp, and like he's actually closer to the line of scrimmage than Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp's running deeper routes since he came back. So if that stays the same, that's gonna be a positive if Stafford's not playing. You'd have to imagine that Rippon's gonna be less aggressive downfield. So I mean, that's a good thing. So Kupp might be a little bit more of a concern without Stafford. But I think Stafford's only going to be out like probably this week and then their bye week. And then like it sounds like they're not even talking about IR now based on the test results. So
he had something like this
figure
happen
2
before,
weeks,
right?
1 game without him and back to normal.
Okay. Yeah, I've got him in a couple leagues where he's depth for me. So I've been losing quarterbacks left and right in all of my leagues. So I need to keep as many as I can. Yeah, so that's mostly injury news. And I guess any other position players that you're curious to see how they do based on their quarterback changes, or anybody maybe like, do you expect for Atlanta, do you expect Kyle Pitts to do more now that you have Heineke, or do you expect Drake London to do more now that Heineke's going to be there instead of Ritter?
I don't know. I would think so. I would think that like London, if he's healthy, I know he left with a groin issue. So like he would be who I'd be most excited for if he's healthy. So Pitts would be second on that team as to who I'd be most excited for. Bijan, I'm a little worried about. Like he had 5 targets and 0 receptions. So I don't know how many of those were before, like with Ritter versus Heineke, but whoever it wasn't, getting the ball to him, like 5 passes, and they can't be deep. They're all likely, line of scrimmage or behind it. So
my guess is Heineke has no touch.
Well, yeah. And so that might be a concern for him. Plus, Algier being, maybe they run it more. Maybe it's all play action, and I mean, that's kind of what it all is anyway, I guess. But Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm too excited for anybody with London being dinged up, but Pitts could be interesting. Trying to
So, like,
think of LA. There's nobody I'm excited about. Like
no, I need
or
Kyron
Las
Williams to come
Vegas.
back
I mean,
healthy.
Las
Oh,
Vegas.
Las Vegas, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There is part of me that wonders, I feel terrible for Devontae Adams.
Yes.
I mean that game. I saw somebody post on Twitter. He should have had 160 yards and 2 touchdowns off of 3 different plays.
He was wide open. As a Lions fan, I am very happy that. I mean, Garoppolo he just came back first game. It's like, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. But
that was bad.
And I mean, he was getting hit left and right also. So it's like, I know he was in a hurry, but like you can't miss like the one
Not
down
by
the
that
line,
far.
man.
Yeah,
Like,
no. That was 5 yards out of bounds.
and he's just so frustrated. Then he drops like a ball, would have gotten them out a first down from outside the, down by the end zone, and everything, just nothing was clicking. It's just it's a mess. Yeah. And they don't trade him. And I heard like one of the GMs said, oh, that's why we didn't get any responses to our phone calls, because everybody got fired the day of the trade deadline. Like, what a shit show and mismanagement that team is displaying. It's just like, you can't wait till the day after the trade deadline to like maybe like do what you got to do to blow the team up. But now you're just
you're just
stuck in limbo.
Yeah,
it was a disservice to their players.
Yeah, so I'm hoping maybe O'Connell will just get locked in on Adams here and just feed him, because that's the safest thing for him to do. So I'm hoping maybe
get
there'll
13 targets the one game they played together, so that it could be likely.
Yeah, because Myers may be going down the field a little bit more, but which I've got a fair bit of Myers too, so I'm not thrilled about that.
No,
but we'll see. So we'll see what the connection looks like, and then it'll likely be some practice squad guy that ends up with 8 receptions that he just does extra practice with on Tuesday night.
Trey Tucker.
Yeah, and that'll help nobody, but yeah, anything, I know we're kind of ending on a low note there talking about Jimmy G, but anything from this past week that you guys were surprised by, excited by, anybody on your teams that, maybe showed something that is giving you a little bit of hope for either their development or playoff push?
I mean, one that we probably haven't really talked about him too much, but like, I mean, he's done nothing but score fantasy points since he returned. I mean, Kamara is just destroying the league. Like, he's outscored Bijan now in like one of my leagues where I have both of them, and he's played 5 games. Like, it's just insane. Like the amount of targets he's getting. So yeah, it's like he's somebody that like before I wasn't willing to pay a late first for if I needed a running back, but he's somebody I'm almost considering. I would probably need something back with it, but like he could be a league winner just based on the amount of volume he's getting.
Yeah. I had a couple teams where I was waiting for him to come back and just pleasantly surprised at the PPR production. I think some people have noticed on tape, he definitely doesn't seem to have the same burst maybe.
No.
But if they're going to feed him like that, and I love, Derek Carr is the perfect quarterback for that right now. But as I'm looking through some rosters here, somebody that you've got, Noah, in our dynasty league that I've gotten a couple of others, Rashid Shaheed, speaking of the Saints, looking like, I think he might be still a little bit hit or miss, but it seems like he's finding his spot in that offense as a deep threat, which is kind of fun to see. Those are the big plays. And I'm thinking about, so the other twist that Noah had in his league that, I've stolen in a couple of leagues that I commission is some of these big play bonuses for touchdowns, where now it kind of shifts the balance again to these players that you only need them to make 1 or 2 catches if they make the right ones any given week. And all of a sudden you go from being 20% chance of winning to being 70% chance of winning. But yeah, anybody else on your mind, Noah, that you're excited about or that you've been waiting to pop this year?
No, I think that was the guy I didn't met on my mind was Rashid. But the guy that I don't know what to do with is Zach Moss. He keeps performing every week. Then I don't know I don't know how to value him. I don't know how to if I should want to get him. Like in my mind, I'm like he should be getting less carries, but when he's carrying the ball, I feel like he's efficient. He looks explosive. If I was them, I would be giving him the ball, but Taylor's so good. So I feel like he's the most I don't know, confusing player that I have, and polarizing in the I feel like I want more of him, but I feel like I shouldn't want more of him. So
yeah, he's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. He's got 5 touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, I've got him in a couple of leagues, and I'm glad that I have him because these are running back needy teams. But if he's just absolute depth, I think my gut says get what you can for him before the shoe drops. That'd be my. But I guess the question is, what can you get for him, right?
I think that's the question at this point, right? Like, I mean, you would have had to trade him 3 weeks ago to get, the value. Now he's capped by Jonathan Taylor. And I mean, I agree with you, Noah, because he's somebody I have on a ton of my teams because I never build with running backs. I go 0 RB for the most part. So like Jerome Ford and Zach Moss and Raheem Mostert are like that's my running back room. Like it's just, and then we'll figure it out, as we move. But he's a guy that now, I mean, Moss, he's still getting a ton of snaps and he's getting a lot of usage. I think it was Underdog podcast I was listening to, and they had mentioned that he's still getting about half the touches by the goal line. So like he might get a little less like from 20 to, the 20 to 20, but like when it gets into the red zone, he seems to be getting equal touches with Jonathan Taylor, which isn't good for Jonathan Taylor owners. So Moss is probably an inexpensive player but it's just, you don't necessarily know when to start him. He's probably a good bye week filler at this point, but I'm not sure he's somebody you feel good about when there's a 16 game slate.
What would you pay for him?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if at
this point,
mid to late second.
Yeah, I was gonna say a third. That's right off. I'd start the offer to third.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like he's done so well that I think, and when people go to look at like the stats for the year, like he's in points per game, he's still like a top 10 player, And so it's like if somebody looks at that, they're gonna so overvalue him. It's kind of like the Mostert thing, right? Like and that running back room, I'm just screwed because like when Achane comes back, I lose, like more value from Mostert and Moss. But like the way my teams are built, I'm actually okay getting whatever they get for me. So I'll probably still be starting Moss a decent amount, but he's not a guy I would go out and buy personally.
Would you take a third for him on a team where you didn't need Moss?
Well, that's never going to be the case. I mean, and in some of my dynasty leagues where it's a little bit older and I've built every other position up, there are teams where I have like Henry and ETN or something. And if I don't really need Moss, I mean, I wouldn't take a third because it takes one injury, right? And he's back to where he was. Like if Jonathan Taylor pulls a hamstring and he's out for 4 weeks, Moss is back to being what he was earlier in the season. So running backs like that, I'd rather just keep him on my bench. So I would definitely pay a third. There's like every league, if somebody offers me Moss for a third, I'll give him the third. So I think that's an underpayment.
There you go.
Right on.
Anyone else kind of in
the
that
question, but whatever.
It gives you a little bit of a value check there, right? So you can see, do you want to offer anything, or again, based on where that is, do you just want to hold? Anybody else that's kind of in that middle of the road or kind of no man's land, or what else you got there, Bill?
No, I was just going to say, is there any young players that have shown something that you're getting a little excited for? Question to you, Drew.
Young guys that have shown something. Shaheed was probably the most recent one that I can think of.
He's a guy that I love on my. I have certain leagues that you get points for like kick return and yardage and stuff like that. So it's like a amazing bone. Like I start him in like all those leagues because he's scoring. You know, you get that extra little bonus from his return yards, and he's been doing really well. He's super efficient with his touches, right? Like 153 yards with 3 catches. So, I really like him. How about rookies? Is there any rookies that are maybe not like huge, the top names that you're kind of excited about?
Speaking of efficient, early in the year, I was excited to see what Marvin Mims was doing for the Broncos, and I keep waiting for them to feed him a little bit more. I know they've got a crowded room there. I was actually thinking this last week against the Chiefs, maybe they'd have to keep up, but then the Chiefs just decided to go out and suck. So I was thinking that maybe he'd get more than 2 targets this week because they'd be playing from behind. But just like we all wagered on our money lines here, Denver comes out and for the first time since Peyton Manning was there, they go and beat the Chiefs. But yeah, Marvin Mims is another one that I tried to snag late second round this year in a lot of places where I could, and just waiting to see if he'll actually catch on somewhere. I was actually hoping maybe Jerry Jeudy would get traded at the deadline, and that would make some room for him there as well. But yeah, he's probably the other rookie that I'm waiting to see that has maybe flashed a little bit of potential with the touches he's gotten.
Yeah, he's not done too much this last few games, has he? I haven't really paid attention. I actually moved him in a league. I forget what I got. I think I gave up Mims and a second for I don't know. I think it might have been Pacheco.
It's not bad return.
Yeah. I needed a running back. So I'm sure most people prefer the other side, but I needed, the way my team is like.
I mean, Pacheco's been solid overall this year. I think a lot of people were expecting him to be much less efficient or maybe less involved, but I've only got him in one league, and I'm glad I've got him there.
Yeah, now I've really been a lot more aggressive adding to my team in the last like week or so. Like, okay, I am, it's week 8. After week 8, I just did my evaluation of where my teams are. Like there's 2 teams that are not making the playoffs out of my 17, and everyone else has a chance. So it's okay. Let's get a little aggressive in some of these teams and see what happens.
Do you guys think that McBride, the tight end for Cardinals, keeps up like his breakout? I mean, he kind of had a nice breakout. You knew it was coming, but then they switched the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest concern, right? Like, it's like, okay, he did that with Dobbs, and all of a sudden they're like, all right, see you, Dobbs. We're going to throw in Clayton Tune or Murray comes back, and Murray, being a shorter quarterback, isn't necessarily going to be a guy looking at the middle of the field, which makes it a little less likely that tight ends are going to be getting targeted. Although Zach Ertz got targets with Murray, so
he did.
Is that a veteran savvy, or is that just he will look at tight ends more? So, I mean, it's exciting. It's interesting, like how many targets he got last week. It was just we've all been waiting for it for the last year and a half, right? So I'm sure anybody that has him is not going to be letting him go for any trades. But like I have him in a few leagues, and I don't necessarily know I'm starting him this week, but I'm happy he's on my team for sure.
Yeah, you missed your window to get him by about 3 weeks. He started to have a shift, even though in the last probably month or so, where you started to see him get more snaps and get more targets, and that balanced out even when Ertz was healthy.
Yep.
So I think you saw the balance shifting there already, and then the Ertz injury certainly accelerated that. And I think I'd probably be more inclined to believe that he continues that. I mean, he was probably was he the top tight end or one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends out of his class when he was drafted?
He was the top tight end. I think he was pretty obviously the top tight end.
Yeah. So
year.
if you were patient last year, or you had a chance to maybe scoop him up from somebody else as a throw-in when it looked like Ertz was going to dominate still, then I think you're very pleased with that. And I think you expect that to continue because he'll do well. And I think Murray will find him as long as he doesn't do anything stupid that upsets Murray.
How do you compare him to like the tight ends from the rookie class this year? Like, I mean, I assume you would want Kincaid, Laporta over him. Do you want Musgrave over him?
No.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where the.
I mean, I would at this point.
What about Mayer?
I would rather have McBride over Mayer.
Mayer's starting to look interesting. You know, even he had that one game that was kind of big, but he looks good when he's like, even Monday night when he only was targeted twice, like the one catch he made was like pretty impressive. So like, I think he looks like a receiving tight end when he's out there. You know, he's not like a Dalton Schultz or something, or like a guy who's going to kind of catch it and fall over. He looks like an athletic guy when he catches it. But I agree. I would rather have Trey McBride, I think.
I think if you can get Mayer now with the uncertainty with the Raiders, and that's probably the biggest knock right now, is just that organization is such a mess, and we don't know what's going to happen there. So it's possible Aiden O'Connell could come out and, give him 7 targets this week and make him relevant immediately. So this might be a short buy window on Mayer if you can convince somebody that the organization's a mess and, they don't want to be as patient as maybe they need to be with a young tight end.
Would you, I'm sorry, I just started thinking about the Raiders with this conversation, but like, would you go out and pick up Jacobs right now if you needed a running back, or are you just kind of like, because there is potentially going to be a whole change to this offense moving forward, or at least play calling.
I still like Jacobs well enough. I mean, it's hilarious. He's had 200 and some odd catches in his career and none of them for a touchdown. I just saw that.
Is that right?
That nugget out there on the Twitterverse. 0 receiving touchdowns in his career, I believe, with 200 plus receptions.
That's crazy.
But I think that's what he was billed as coming out of Alabama, is he was between the tackles, right? So I think he's a fine running back. If you can get him anywhere below market value, which I'm assuming up till now you would have had to have given a late first or something for him based on his usage. So if you can get him for a couple of seconds now instead.
I mean, would you trade him away for that?
If my team is not, if I'm in a place where I think my team is probably not going to do well in the playoffs or make the playoffs, absolutely. I think I am trying to get out of running backs earlier than later. That's been a mistake I've made with a couple of running backs in the past. So if I'm not a competitive team, a playoff team, and somebody came with a couple of seconds that looked like they'd be maybe in, if both of them are in the top 20 picks next year, I would be open to that.
Okay. Well, so here's some trades just since Sunday. Jacobs for AJ Dillon and a first. Jacobs for Terry McLaurin. So
that's interesting.
Jacobs for Rashad White in a second. So prices are kind of on that first round cusp, I guess.
Yeah. I probably don't want another running back.
Right. Although it would be a decent hedge. You see Rashad White's getting a lot of receptions at this point. So I don't actually hate that trade, getting that side of it. And you get the second as a bonus, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're making a playoff push this year in our dynasty league. Is there anybody that you're spying on to see if you can maybe add depth, or any position that you feel like you're trying to get more of here before we hit the back half of the season?
I'm probably similar a little bit with the 0 running back idea. So I'm trying to what running backs I can get on the cheap. So I'm trying to hunt down like a Zach Moss, that kind of high upside, and like a boom or bust kind of like play for cheap. What can I get that will?
Mm-hmm.
What about like a James Conner? Is that somebody that you would think about adding just based on you could probably get him cheaper because he's hurt right now? But whenever he plays, he seems to put up really good points. He might be an interesting cheap running back ad. Trying to think of like who else. I mean, maybe you could get David Montgomery under market right now just because Jahmyr Gibbs has blown up the last 2 weeks fantasy wise, but they're still going to use him and he's still going to be their goal line back.
Right.
I mean, can you get him for a couple seconds? I mean, maybe that's more expensive than what you're thinking of paying. I mean, what do you have to pay for Connor at this point? A late second, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like he might be the better ad if you're just looking for this year, price wise. Got any suggestions there, Drew?
Yeah, I'm just looking through some of the teams that are at the bottom of our standings here, and one team has AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones on the roster. So I don't know if Aaron Jones is gettable or attractive in that range. Another team has both of the Texans running backs. So, is Singletary a guy to target and see if, will he be involved a little bit more? I think Pierce is kind of leveled
Gus
off
Edwards?
a bit. Yeah, not after last week.
I mean, he's still like a unexciting running back. So if it's on a team who's not contending, maybe.
Yeah, he'd be. I would love to get a Gus Edwards in a couple of leagues where I'm making a push and take him as a flex play. And yeah, absolutely.
I'm just trying to look at who else would be. Maybe Kyron Williams. You get him now before he comes off of IR.
Yeah.
I mean, but then how much are they going to be using Darrell Henderson now? And if, something does end up being bad with Stafford, then no running back you're going to be excited about on that team. Jerome Ford's an interesting one. I think people are going to be scared with the split this last game where they all kind of got similar touches, but Ford coming back from an injury and still getting, that many touches is pretty impressive, or snaps at least. So Ford might be somebody you could get cheaper also. Yeah, that's right. My wheelhouse of yucky running backs to add.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like, is there anybody that you're thinking about that maybe is like that one injury away? You mentioned Zach Moss earlier if JT goes down again, but anybody else that maybe is a slightly deeper, like go get him super cheap and see what happens as the season wears on. I mean, we've got 6 weeks, I guess 5 weeks before we actually hit playoffs, so a lot can happen still. So anybody that's kind of a one play away from being relevant that you want to maybe get ahead of or stash on a deeper league.
I like Jaleel McLaughlin in Denver. I think that when he gets the ball, he looks like he could be the guy.
He does.
Javonte is just dominating those, and I think his what do you call it, injury history, that he's like, if they're going to give him the ball 30 times a game, then he's headed for an injury, and I think it'll be Jaleel winning some championships.
Yeah, he's still somebody you can probably get for a decent price because he hasn't shown it as like a guy who's going to get a ton of touches in a game, but he's super efficient. Kendre Miller might be one. He's starting to get a little bit more in New Orleans if something happened to Kamara. Eli Mitchell, something happens to CMC. He could be probably, I mean, you got to worry about him getting injured before CMC, to be honest. Charbonnet, I mean, he's probably a little pricier, though.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Rico Dowdle. You probably get him pretty cheap. you know.
People online starting to sour a little bit on Pollard or show some of those less than exciting statistics of his production over the last few weeks, based on what I think where people were drafting him this year.
I do like the Singletary mentioned earlier. What about Lenny? I mean, do you guys have any interest in adding Lenny to your rosters now that the Bills added him? Because Latavius Murray has not been. I mean, he does pretty good at protection, right? And that's one of the main reasons they put him in there. But Lenny can do that. So, like, who's to say that he just doesn't completely take over Latavius Murray's?
I would assume so. I was listening to the football guys earlier today, and I think that was their assumption as well. Is it's less of an omen for Cook than it is for Murray getting replaced. So I put a couple of bids in, but my problem is I'm behind the curve in a few of these leagues where people had already added him. So if I could have gotten for a blind bid, sure. I don't know that I'm giving up a whole lot to add him as depth at this point. I don't know what people are going to be asking. Do either of you have him on any of your leagues where you would potentially trade him away for anything?
I just traded him away in my league just 2 weeks ago.
You traded him away?
Yeah, I got rid of him.
Okay, so right before the news came that he signed with the Bills?
Basically, yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah, I cut him in a 16-team league. Pretty pissed at myself now, but yeah, I think I added him actually on Monday when the news came out. I had in a 1 QB league. I had Garoppolo on my bench, and I'm like, I'm just cutting Garoppolo, and I'm going to add Lenny.
Nice.
And see what happens. You know, kind of worked out for me both ways.
Yeah,
but that was the only one I held on to him as long as I could until the buys happened, and then it was like, okay. Yeah. But did you trade away Lenny or did you cut him?
I traded him.
Oh, what'd you get?
I traded him, Justice Hill, and a 5th for Cam Akers.
Oh, yeah.
And I
like that.
Madison. So I was like, I'll just shore that up.
Yeah.
To me, it was bench fodder for shoring up a backfield.
Yep. And he looked pretty solid, at least in that, what was it, last week or the week before? He looked really good. Mm-hmm. So he was getting a lot more touches than he had been, at least, Akers.
We just one of the guys that Noah and I are in the league with here, Jeremy, he and I manage a couple of teams together. So we actually just got a notification in a 12-team super flex with a little tight end premium that we had a trade offer accepted. We're pretty deep at quarterback, and one of the deeper quarterbacks we had here was Sam Howell, and we sent him to get the aforementioned Dalton Kincaid back. Thoughts there, gentlemen?
I mean, I like it. What's the scoring for tight ends?
I think it's 1.5. It's tiered PPR, so it's half PPR for running back, full PPR for wide receiver, and 1.5 for tight ends. So we added him behind. We've got Kelsey and Andrews already. Just adding a little bit more youth.
Yeah, I mean, I dig it. What are your guys' thoughts on Howell? Because, like, do you think he's going to be like their option moving forward, or is he just kind of like maybe be the quarterback for the next year or two, and then they're going to replace him with somebody a little bit more long term?
What do you think, Noah?
I don't really have an opinion. I feel like he just throws up the fantasy numbers. I mean, as far as he's a serviceable number 2, right? Every week. I feel like week in and out, I'd rather have him right now than Bryce Young. So
wow.
as far as
production
right now, putting up numbers,
yeah,
I feel like I like him more.
Maybe you'd rather put him in your starting lineup?
Yeah, I'd put him over Bryce Young.
Yeah, I could see that.
Would you make that trade replacing Cousins with Howell? What do you mean? Bryce Young for Howell and a late first, but it's a definite late first. Like, let's say it's definitely a 111, 112.
For Howell and
the 111 or 112 for Bryce Young.
I would rather have Howell in the 1 all day, every day.
How about you, Drew?
Man, that's tough, man.
Are you stuck to your priors on Bryce Young, or do you still have hope for Bryce Young?
I think I have a fair amount of hope for him that he'll figure it out. I think from what I've heard, he processes pretty well, which is the tougher part of the quarterbacking piece, right? I mean, they're all physically gifted in the NFL, so he'll need to practice some things there. But ultimately, between having some hope for him and then, I mean, he should have some insulated value and a lot of opportunity based on the draft capital. Not to say that, we've got all the older, Josh Rosen and some of those guys that we could point back to, but I think he's probably more committed to the game than maybe it came out that Josh Rosen was. And so that would make me think for a long time if I got that offered in my inbox for, that'd be tough. I don't see Howell as a long-term. I think he's got this year, and depending on where Washington falls next year, they're not going to be early enough to snag a must draft kind of guy. So unless they make a trade and, whether you believe it's like a Justin Fields that they can get or something in a trade from the Bears, if the Bears are going with a top pick, I give him maybe another season and a half, but it's possible some of our leagues don't last for 2 more seasons. So, hey, if you got the production now, I totally get wanting to put that in your starting lineup.
I mean, to be fair, they're 3-5 right now, and they just traded away their defensive line. And that was the only good thing about their defense. So the likelihood of them winning many games this year is probably low. So they could end up with a good pick this year.
Yeah, that's true.
And that also maybe makes Howell more interesting, right? Because
year,
the defense sucks, so they're going to have to just
YOLO ball 40 times a game.
And he's going to have a ton of interceptions. He's going to get sacked 4,212 times by the end of the season.
And you hope he stays healthy through it all.
Yeah, I mean, he is interesting. Like, I made some decisions early this year in best ball more so. It was like, okay, Desmond Ridder or Howell, because they were getting drafted around the same time.
Yeah.
And I think I unfortunately drafted Ridder more because I liked the players he was playing with more, especially with Bijan, and I thought it'd be more. I thought he might open it up a little bit, and not happy with that. But he's somebody I don't know if I could get myself to trade for. Like, I don't like paying decent prices for quarterbacks that I'm not certain will have like 2 to 3 years of play, unless they're old guys or something that I know I'm getting a certain level of. Yeah, it's a tough one, but the people that drafted him, man, it's paying off for him for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think the trade made sense for you.
Yeah, I mean, for more context, I mean, we're starting Allen and Mahomes in that league as well. We've got Stafford and somebody else is another depth quarterback. So we won last year, and we're kind of selling out to try to repeat this year.
It's a good trade.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Anything else that Bill? Did you get any other trades done, or no? Did you get anything? I didn't see anything in our league that came up outside of the Fournette trade a couple weeks ago. You just did something recently, though, you picked up another running back, though, didn't you? Was it this week or last week that you
I sent a fourth. So I sent a fourth for Dalvin Cook. I was really, really hoping he was going to get traded by the deadline. I mean, he asked for it, right? Like, he was pretty mouthy about it, and I was like, he's going somewhere.
It's pretty minimal cost to take that shot.
For a fourth, I think that's a
gamble.
Whatever. If he ended up getting traded, then you immediately got value. He's still probably worth a fourth now. So what the heck?
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to look to. I'm so bad with Sleeper. I can't ever find the transactions for my team. So
I did I don't know, in the last 6 weeks, I think I pulled 8 trades. I mean, I sold Jameson Williams was the one I was most happiest about. Selling him for a high first 2025 and first and fourth.
Yeah.
I think
another
that was
Detroit
good.
fan.
I pulled Jamar Chase from Jeremy, which was a big deal.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I was a little off on one of the trades I mentioned before where I gave up Mims in a second. I got Godwin back. And then I gave up Jaden Reed in a second, and I got Pacheco in a third.
Yeah, I love both those for you.
Yeah, that was in the same league. That's why my wiring got crossed. It was within an hour of each other. So, sometimes when you make that first trade, then you're like, all right, let's do this. Let's,
right. You get iron's hot.
Yep. Let's, you got me. The faucet's on. Now I'm going to do what I got to do to win this. So,
yeah,
it's a fun time of year. That's for sure. And, some leagues, do you guys have trade deadlines in your leagues? Or I guess more importantly in your dynasty league, is there a trade deadline? That's good.
Nope. We walked it back over the last couple seasons, made it later last year, and then this year we finally removed it.
I know in some of my leagues it's right when the playoffs start, that's when it stopped. There's a trade deadline, but a lot all the new leagues I've joined do not have trade deadlines. And I kind of like the different dynamics between the two personally. I enjoy both of them. So I like having a little bit of both, because sometimes it's okay, well, you got to maybe add a little bit of depth before the playoffs start if you want to, rather than just react to an injury in week 15 or something. So it just adds, a little bit more thought and wheeling and dealing, forced wheeling and dealing at this moment, so yeah. So another week in the books, huh?
Yeah, we did a good one here. I think some good ideas there, some interesting thoughts around some players that maybe we hadn't had to think about until we got deeper into the season. So thank you, Noah, for coming on and hanging out with us and sharing some thoughts, and
it was fun.
A couple questions to the table here. Thank you for everybody that's listening to us, whether we had a few folks here that I think watched us. Saw Puff Pass kick in here again. Appreciate you hanging out with us and joining us each week. And then if you're listening on a podcast later on, appreciate however much time you're committing to this, depending on your playback speed. Hopefully you get something good out of it that you can use in the week coming up here. We do have bye weeks again in week 9, like Bill said. So check those, check the waivers one more time. Make sure you got your lineup set there.
And there's a 9:30 game on Sunday, so make sure you check that.
Big one. Yeah, this is battling for first place in the AFC. As a Bills fan, I love that one of them is going to lose guaranteed. I probably hope it's the Dolphins, so we have a better shot at the division if I had to pick. But and who do you guys have this week?
Bye week for the Lions.
Bye week, that's right. Yeah, okay. Nice. But yeah, good to hang out with you guys again. We'll do this again next week. At this point, though, I think we are out of here.
Thanks for having me.